Hello, welcome back to my channel. I have a process video for you today for Colorcast Designs May release, which is travel related. I am scrapping an intro page to one of my UK albums, and I'm actually scrap lifting myself. This layout here I made last year, and I don't think I ever did a process video, so I thought it would be fun to recreate it in a slightly different way. I'm using 3 photos instead of 1. The first thing I do is cut a whole bunch of wedges out of the Pinkfresh Studio Out and About collection papers that I have. And my original idea was to not copy the other layout exactly, but put the Go See Do at the bottom, have sort of an arc around it so that there'd be open space where it stands out, and the photos, so they're printed 4x6, would form an arc along with the papers. But I didn't like how much blank space would be at the bottom, and because the photos are a little bit wider, I didn't want to cut off a whole bunch from the bottom. I didn't think I could make a smooth arc. So then I decided to move it down and go ahead and do the same thing I did with the last layout. Put the title at the top right. And in the top area, I'm also going to include some of the confetti airplanes and some stitching. Then I go off to reprint the photos. Instead of 4x6, I printed them at 3.5x8. I almost printed them at 3x8, but I wanted to make sure I had plenty of space that I'm going to overlap with the pattern papers so that there wouldn't be any weird gaps. At first I cut the pattern paper a little too small, and I was trying to make this one work that has the stamps. I didn't really like how it went, so I'm going to stick to more of the regular patterns rather than some that have like a bigger elements. This portion of the video has me trying a lot of different ways to place these pattern papers. I cut the wedges and then I cut them a little skinnier. Sometimes they're too parallel and I have to cut them more of a triangular shape. The first time I cut them with my Caterpillar Pro, one edge was straight, so sometimes I end up having to cut them down to be more triangular. My strategy was to have patterns that had high contrast, and for sure the ones that are right next to the photo, I didn't want them to blend in with the photo. So for instance, that globe one that has the light blue, I wouldn't put that next to a photo with the sky that's light blue, because then it would blend too much. They also wanted to have light and dark contrast across the entire page. I didn't make any attempt to make this a very clean looking arc all the way across. The papers are intentionally placed a little haphazard and not the same lengths. I could have placed them all like this and then maybe drawn a nice arc and cut it really cleanly, but I don't know. For me, that's not as interesting. I think it's more fun when you have things more haphazard, the layers are staggered, the lengths and the widths are different, and it just makes it a much more interesting design. That really light one that is like a map, I really wanted to use, but it was really standing out at first. The way I made it work was to only have a little bit of it showing and to nestle it between 2 darker papers. And also I think it helps that the photos themselves have some light areas. I've placed it sort of equidistant from the middle and right photos so that your eye is reading light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. I got to the point where all the tails were a hindrance, so I trimmed those off at my big trimmer, the Caterpillar Pro, and then I used the scissors to do a little bit of the trimming on the top. And I put plenty of my roller adhesive on so that everything doesn't start shifting around. I have a little bit more adjusting to do later, but right now I'm going to concentrate on the top portion of the layout. Hang on a second. Actually, I noticed that between each other photo there were 3 little wedges of paper, but at the very right there were only 2 and it was bugging me. So I decided to bring some more of the rainbow paper over. My goal was not to have an exact repeating pattern. I do want to have this look a bit random, but it is important to have some repeating, and especially when there's a pattern that's clearly on one side and it's not on the other, it was important to bring that over. Looking at it right now, I could see that it could have been that rainbow one could have been tilted a little bit better. And maybe I should have cut it at a different spot so it didn't match up with the one in the middle that has the pink at the top. But it is what it is. And then one of the touches I love to do with lots of strips like this is to ruffle them up, make them look a little messy, a little distressed. Now I'm going back to the top. One of the sets in this release is confetti, and part of the confetti are some small airplanes. So I thought it'd be cute to have a little airplane path leading to the title. And I'm going to stitch it on for some nice texture. After deciding where my two airplanes were going to go, I drew a squiggly line with a couple of loops. I used a 0.3 mechanical pencil because I find that that is very light and very thin, so it's easier to erase later. And then I pierced the holes with my hole piercer. I find that I like a spacing that's about 3/8 of an inch gap, except when I'm going around loops or circles, I make the holes a little closer together. Since the airplanes are blue and green, and there's a lot of blue in the photos and in the papers, and let's face it, I really like blues and aquas. So I picked the aqua thread. Let's do some fast forwarding magic so you don't have to sit through all the stitching. That's looking pretty good. I will be adding some twine at the bottom to tie in, no pun intended, with the thread. Time to adhere all my acrylics. I'm using the Liquitex matte medium in my fine line bottle. It's my favorite. I mention it every time, but I always have to assume that there's someone new. And I did remove the backing to the outline that is white, but I left the backing on all the more transparent acrylics so that they would stand out better. I'm going to fast forward all the adhering too. I stepped away for a while and decided I needed to adjust a few things. I cut the reddish paper down because it was really wide and it's a very bold color. I wanted a little less of it there. And I moved down the whole entire left side so that it was more of an arc rather than going from high to low along the edge. I'm using a gray Pinkfresh Studio Alpha that matches this line really well, although this one's from the mix number 3. And spelling out the 3 different countries we went to. Within each country we went through several different areas. This is going to be the intro page to this album, and then I will have intro pages for each section as well. It worked out perfectly to just pick 3 photos because I could fit them across and I had 3 countries. It would have been weird to only have the acrylics above, and I had the perfect plan, add the geotags at the bottom, one above each country name. There were 3 different sizes of these geotags in the pack, and I chose the middle size. The smaller ones wouldn't have stood out as much, and the bigger ones were just too big. I pulled out some stripy twine. I had done this in the original layout, and it adds just a little bit more texture, a little bit more contrast. And I end up using 4 different colors. One is a red and white, one is a navy and white, although it looks kind of black. A couple of lighter ones, a green one and an orange one. I usually use washi tape in the back to hold down any threads, but because the twine is thicker, I actually use score tape because it's stronger, and what I do is I keep the backing on it. All that paper is pretty well adhered with the roller adhesive, but this is my secret weapon, the tiny attacher, and that's part of the reason I use the twine, because I like to staple down the ends, which also gives me extra holding power for the papers. I know this is going by really fast where I opened up the tiny attacher to staple in areas that it couldn't reach otherwise. I have a link pop up right now to the video I made, which is a demo of the tiny attacher stapling anywhere on your project, so you can take a better look at that. For my journaling, I thought it would be fun to follow along the airplane trail, and it reads 15 days, 3 countries, 3 cities, 3 villages, 6 castles, 5 locks, 3 rivers, 3 cathedrals, 1 underground mine, 1 gorge, 2 planes, 6 trains, 210,149 steps. By the way, I wrote that out with a marker. It's the Staedtler Tri Plus Fine Liner. The papers were still looking a little too neat, so I decided to ruffle them up some more and to rip them a little bit in certain areas. I tried a few areas above, sort of in the middle, and I didn't really like it, so I only ended up ripping areas on either side towards the bottom of the photos. And of course, I added some more staples to those areas. Here I've slowed down so you can see all the details. Isn't that fun? I had a lot of fun putting this one together. And here are some still photos. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. I always appreciate any feedback. And if you're not a subscriber, I hope you consider subscribing now. Don't forget to hit up the Colorcast Design shop before all these goodies are sold out. I have a link down below. I think my voice is starting to go. It comes in and out and throughout this whole video. Thank you so much again, guys, and I hope to see you here next time.